the was launched.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to another episode of AF24NEWS Talks. Today, just like always, I'm joined by Dr. Olabisi Dejifolutile and Mr. Henry Okonkwo. And today, we're talking about the softened strike of the Nigerian Labour Congress. Recall that a week ago, we were here discussing the NLC going on strike, and they had just rejected a 60,000 proposed minimum wage at the time. A day after that recording, the strike was actually softened and people were able to return back to business as usual. The airports were open again. But recently, just 2 days ago, the government proposed another minimum wage, which was 62,000 naira, 2,000 more than the rejected wage. And the NLC rejected the 62,000 naira as well, saying that they insist on a minimum of 250,000 naira. Chris Onyeka, the NLC's Assistant General Secretary, also called it a poverty or starvation wage when he was asked about it. So today we just want to discuss, the unfolding drama between the government and the trade, the labor unions. So I want to start from Dr. Dejifolutile. Just tell me what you see so far. You had some interesting thoughts for us last week, but what do you see about the situation so far?
Well, it's interesting. I think last week, when Labour decided to call off the strike based on what they said government offered, I laughed because at that time, the federal government, give it to them, chose their words carefully. After the meeting with the secretary to the federal government, SGF, the former governor, and they call it tripartite meeting. At that meeting, the federal government said it was willing to pay above 60,000 naira. That was what they said. And they didn't make any commitment. They said they were willing to pay above that. And based on that, the labor unions called off the strike. And they were even excited about that government's proposal. And they kept on, because people were angry that, I told you last week that nobody really trusted these labor unions. We weren't sure if they meant what they said they wanted to do. And people were complaining that when you knew that you didn't have enough balls to really proceed on this strike, why did you go in the first instance? And I remember them defending their action that, before the strike, government told them that it wouldn't go beyond 60,000 naira. That was the reason why they went on strike. And now that government had indicated its willingness to go beyond 60,000 naira, they felt it was enough for them to relax the strike, which was the language they used, that they would relax that strike for 1 week and see what government will come up with. And I told people around me then that these people are funny, because anything above 60,000 could be 61,000 naira. And I also told people around me that I did not see the government giving the labor unions anything even above 65,000 naira. I said 1,000, 2,000 naira is above 60,000 naira. Does it mean that the labor union will now, that you went on a strike, you cut down, you shut down the national grid? Some people couldn't access medical facilities. You disrupted a whole lot of things just because you wanted the 2,000 naira above what was initially agreed to be paid to you. So I see the whole thing as being funny, really. And I see an unserious trade unions, and I see a very careful, meticulous federal government that is that seems to understand the way the labor thinks, that seems to also understand how to negotiate with labor, and probably seems to understand the implication of even awarding too much money to labor unions. And I'm still going to come to that if when we get to it, because the real question is, how do we even solve the problems that we are having? Is it by increasing salaries? I don't even think that is the solution, because we have just 720,000 personnel working in the federal civil service, for example. So 720,000 people in the federal civil service. The states, we have 36 states, and how many people could be in the workforce of state governments? So at the end of the day, majority of Nigerians are not in government employ, and so awarding a wage increase, how does that benefit even the other people in the country? Bearing in mind that any additional to salary is going to also trigger inflation again. So really, I do not see the labor getting anything substantial above this 62,000 naira that they've been offered. They are still insisting on getting to 50,000 naira, and of course it is impossible. I think I can use that word safely, that it is.
Well, the NLC themselves rejected the 100,000 naira proposal as well. But now I just want to switch to Mr. Henry. What do you think that the government's reaction so far, like the government's responsiveness, is enough for the NLC to call off the strike action and at least say, oh, the government is now giving us some kind of feedback? Because we've seen the government respond to the NLC, frequently about this issue. Yes, we'll give you above 60,000. Okay, now we'll give you 62,000. At least there's some movement there. Is it enough to say, okay, we're calling off the strike?
Well, talking about action of the 62,000 naira offer, whether it's enough to declare strike. Well, so far, based on what the NLC president said, that the figures are already with the president, the 62,000 naira they offered, that they are waiting for the president to be like, this is the cap, this is what. I think he gave an instance where government arrived at 37,000 minimum wage some years ago, and then the president at that time made it 40,000 and struck a balance. So now the 62,000 naira they've offered, the tripartite committee has brought out, is still with the president, and that they are willing to wait and see if the president is going by that. That will determine their action. And I think Nigerians should just wait and see. And let's just see how it goes. Because as it is now, they are still busy with this game of table tennis, playing chess and negotiating and all those things. Merry-go-round of all those things. Let's just wait. Let's just wait and see what's going to happen. Let's just see if the presidency is adopting the 62,000, or if he's like maybe add a little sprinkle 3,000 there to make it 65 or make it. But if you look at the gap between the 250, the Labour say they are not going anything lower than 250, and the 62,000, I really don't know how the presidency can close the gap. I honestly, I can't tell. But let's just wait. Let's see how this whole thing pans out.
Okay, well, I just want to ask just before we wrap up. Now we just said that 250,000 is virtually impossible, and then yet Labour does not want to come at 100,000 naira. Do you think there's any merit to the government feeling like the Labour Party is not being, um, should I say, cooperative in this negotiation process? Because if, for instance, the point you made earlier about the the minimum wage affecting inflation after the fact, so do you also think on the part of Labour they should also be more conservative?
Well, I don't think the Labour should be more conservative. Even if the Labour likes, it can ask for 1 million naira. It's negotiating for itself, and it has a right to ask for whatever amount, no matter how unrealistic the figure is. And don't forget the fact that our own country is even a very peculiar country, in that, like we have always said, we see affluence among our political elites, and also increase in allowances, salaries, and the rest, without the same being done for workers. So I cannot say that what Labour is asking is too much or too small. But however, I know that it is also the responsibility of the government to give a kind of wage that they know that the economy can actually accommodate. Because it is not enough for you to say, I want to pay somebody. You need to know your situation, you need to know what you can afford to pay. So both of them, for me, they are doing their thing. Both of them are playing their games, and there is no problem about that. However, what I think is that we should move beyond even this minimum wage issue. I think it is high time labor unions began to call for good governance. I think that is the ultimate solution to the problem that we are having. Because, like I mentioned earlier on, if you award wages, there will be inflation, and it will wipe it off. Unfortunately, it will even affect Nigerians that are not even benefiting from the review of wages. And you can mark my words, even if the federal government agrees to give labor 70,000, 100,000, there are many workers in the private sector that will never get that money, because you cannot force them to pay what they don't have. Business economy is bad. The situation generally is nothing to write home about. You only pay people the money you make. If you are an entrepreneur in this country, or you are an employer, you know that you are going through things. And I'm very sure that many Nigerians will prefer to collect the little money they can collect than for their employers to ask them to go and stay home. So it goes beyond wages, it goes beyond what government is offering. Let us begin to talk about good governance. Let us begin to talk about how the government and the people that we have elected to power are going to work for the good of Nigerians. Let the labor begin to fight for that. I think that is the only lasting fight that can bring joy, satisfaction to everybody. And that is my advice for labor. They should just know that government is not to give them, it won't give them. Already the state government are saying that they can't even pay 60,000. You understand? And it is true. So if they fight for good governance, if we allow the rule of law to work in Nigeria, if we put our politicians, if we ensure that they work according to the rules, and when they steal, we ensure that they get punished for stealing our commonwealth, then things will be better, and gradually things will work for us in this country.
Well, thank you very much for that conclusion. And thank you again for joining us here at AF24 News Talks. To see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel, follow us on all our social media platforms, and also www.af24news.com. We post trending news updates all across the world, from all across the world every day of the week. Thank you again. Have a wonderful week.